Dan Illman, Mike Beer kicking off a pick 4 on Breeders' Cup Saturday at Santa Anita with race number 9, the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Mile. Our coverage is supported today by Racing Blue Storm, a true breakthrough in sports nutrition for horses. Racing Blue Storm, speed and power for longer, designed by nature, improved by science. Here's the field for the Breeders' Cup Mile, wide open edition this year. Several European entrants, several quality fillies trying the boys here in the mile. Got Stormy, who got so good at Saratoga. She's beaten males already in the 4-star Dave handicap up at the Old Spa. And Uni for Chad Brown, who just flew down the center of the track to win the First Lady last time out. It's an intriguing race. It could come down to how the pace plays up. In Timeform US, they have no idea how the pace is going to play up because there are so many European horses. Do you think the late kickers are going to get a fair chance in here?
I mean, I think they will. It is interesting, though, when you go through this field top to bottom. There's not a ton of pace in this race. So I guess they could be up against it. I'm just going to assume that it's going to be a fairly run race. And I think there are a lot of different horses who could come out on top here.
The number 1, Sway Dawa, is a Group 1 winner in North America. He won the 2017 Shadwell Turf Mile and gave a really good run, went 4th in the Breeders' Cup Mile that year behind World Approval, who is in raging form. It's nice to see that this 8-year-old is still in excellent form. He just missed last time out. He's the kind of horse that needs a little bit of pace. He doesn't have a lot of speed. He's your typical European. I'm not sure he's in the same form now that he was in 2 years ago, but he's still pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people remember him from the end of 2017 when he made some noise over here. He is 1 for 14 since that Breeders' Cup of 2017. He's clearly lost a step. His Shadwell last time was fine, but that was a race where the closers really had a chance at it late, and he just couldn't quite find enough.
I think one of our favorite trainers, Kieran McLaughlin's done a great job with Mclaughlin because this horse was off for so long. He always had talent at the beginning of his career, but he obviously had some problems. Kieran gave him plenty of time. All he's done is win 3 out of 4 with the lone loss coming in the Woodbine Mile. I think the best he looked was in this race, the Knickerbocker, his most recent start, where he just was stalking in between horses. He angles to the outside. You see him in those blue silks. He usually gets a little bit goofy in the stretch with his lead changes, but you see him on his right lead run right by this pace setter. I think this horse is getting good at the right time. The question is, do you believe he's a Grade 1 Breeders' Cup kind of horse?
I mean, I don't know. I bet him 2 back in a Grade 1 mile
ran well
up at Woodbine. I thought he ran fine in that race. He got a little drifty in the stretch there, and it really cost him. Wound up getting disqualified, but he ran fine in there. The race we just looked at, I liked. I thought he ran well in there, Dan. I don't love the Knickerbocker field necessarily. I think this is going to be tougher for him. This is a good horse, though, and he's in good form right now.
Space Traveler, the number 3, was an okay 2-year-old. He was Group 3 placed in France, and that's nothing to sneeze at. But I think he's reaching full maturity now at 3. He got a big win last time out at Leopardstown in that Group 2 stakes race because he just flew home that day to win. And again, there are going to be a lot of questions about him in Group 1 company, but he's going to be a really good price and he's in strong form.
Yeah, I think the class questions are very fair with this horse because I think it really is a question of whether he's good enough to beat horses like this. He started out his career okay, sort of lost his way a little bit after his first 3 starts or 4 starts, and it felt like maybe he just wasn't going to class up. He's actually come back much improved this year as a 3-year-old. His race 2 back was pretty good. I thought he was down inside for a lot of that race, and maybe it ultimately didn't work out last time. He really finished strong in that race. If he can get some kind of a trip in here, he's a threat at a price.
I think Trey Fleurs is a little bit underrated. Okay, he doesn't win very often, but all he's done is he's placed in 5 consecutive group races in France, one of them being the Prix d'Estapan, a prestigious Group 1 race. Okay, he was the beaten favorite last time out over firm ground, and I think that's kind of a question for him. Is he a little bit better with some cut in the ground? He's consistent. I could see this horse get a piece of this at a big price.
I can see him getting a piece too. He'd be hard for me to use on top. Maybe cutting back to the mile after 2 starts going longer will help him. But he started out his career with 4 straight wins. Since then, 2 wins on synthetic, and that is it. He keeps coming up short.
Home court advantage for True Valor and the very good trainer Simon Callahan coming off the local prep, the City of Hope mile at Santa Anita. And this horse got some pace to run at on this day. He's going to come with a nice run and win. It's now 2 in a row for True Valor, and this race came off a layoff.
Yeah, 2 in a row over course and distance. And you're right, he was off a layoff here. And it is a new top figure for him, too. I don't like this race overall, Dan. You can see them all just sort of hitting the wire together. The figure says he's competitive. I kind of want to see him do it again.
The 6 Got Stormy was always good and solid early in her career, but she became a revelation over the summer at Saratoga. When she won that restricted De La Rose race, it just looked like a public workout. Tyler Gaffalione never moved a muscle, and she blew away from that field in the stretch. And the 4-star Dave, ridden very confidently, swung by those horses with no problem whatsoever. In the Woodbine Mile, she ran really well against El Tormenta. She's ridden confidently again in the White Silks. It looks like she's going to win this race, but El Tormenta in the Pink Silks, pardon me, looks like she's going to win this race, but El Tormenta got a great ground-saving trip in the orange and sneaks up inside of Got Stormy. Do you think Got Stormy was too confidently handled, or did the trip just make the difference for El Tormenta?
No, I don't think she was too confidently handled. She gets beat, to me, she gets beat on the square here by a big long shot. I'll just say that this is the way that I look at her anyway, whether it's right or wrong. First of all, I think she showed that she was an improved horse in the Jenny Wiley and in the Distaff Turf Mile. She ran really well in those races, and then just built off that at Saratoga. The excuse I'm going to give her, Dan, is the Woodbine Mile. I think it's just a totally different race. The one turn with the long stretch at Woodbine, and I think it got to her. The races at Saratoga are going to be more like this on a quick 2-turn mile course with a shorter stretch. I think that really moves this horse up. If she gets a trip in this race, and she should because she's handy, I think she's a big threat to rebound in here.
And the strong, firm ground should also work to her advantage. That course at Woodbine had a little bit of give. Bolo is the number 7. We know he is pretty fast. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that actually supplies the pace. Now, he couldn't get to the lead in the City of Hope Mile, didn't get close from it from a lousy outside post position, and that pretty much sealed his fate. And in the Del Mar Mile, another horse wanted the lead, and Bolo ended up kind of conceding, and that's not what he wants to do. But you go 3 starts back in the Shoemaker Mile, and hey, at Santa Anita, he makes you pay it 33-1. You can never dismiss a horse like Bolo, especially if you believe he can get to the top.
Yeah, he should be able to make the lead in this race. That gives him his very best chance. He's been pretty disappointing in his last 2 races. I get the excuses that are being made for him. He's been pretty disappointing, though. I'm a huge fan of his, Dan. I don't think I can take him in this race.
El Tormenta just received a beautiful ride by Eureka Rosa da Silva in the Woodbine Mile, taking advantage of that inside post, sitting the pocket all the way to the quarter pole, easing out to the 2-path, back to the inside. El Tormenta did the rest with a 101 Beyer speed figure. He was 45-1 that day. I can understand anyone saying, I want to see it again.
Yeah, 100%. I can see that too, but it'll be a big price again in this race. Off of a quality win over a really good horse. He's always been pretty good, this horse. He's underrated. It'll be a big price again in this race. I won't argue.
Circus Maximus is the kind of European runner that's a little bit handy. I don't think he has to be, 15, 20 lengths off the pace. I think he can sit in mid-pack under Ryan Moore, and he's compiled a very nice record at a mile in Europe this year, winning the St. James Palace at a big price, then taking the Prix du Moulin last time out over good to soft going. There's nothing wrong with this horse. He is in very good form, and I think you have to consider him one of the major contenders in this race.
I do consider him a major contender in here. I agree with everything you said about him. He's got 2 major Group 1 mile wins overseas this year. He was second in another big race in the Sussex. He's just in really good form, and he's got a great running style for this race. He's very handy. He'll be forward in this race. I think there's a lot to like about this horse.
What's happened with the 10 without parole? This horse won the St. James Palace Stakes as a 3-year-old, and then his last few races have just not been good at all. He has been transferred to the Chad Brown barn. He is going to get Lasix for the first time. Do you see him in this race as a horse that they want to get forward with and maybe try to push the pace? He has a nice dirt pedigree actually on the bottom. I'd actually like to see him on that surface down the road. Maybe he just needs Lasix.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think he's a pretty dangerous horse there. Maybe he just can't run at all anymore, but he was cut out to be a really nice horse. And, You look at his recent losses, there's Roaring Lion in there, Almond Eye and Dubai Two-Back. He wasn't going to win those races. I don't know what happened last time. Something obviously went wrong. He lost his action early and was basically eased in there. I would put a line through that race. It'll be interesting to see what he does.
Very confident placing, bringing this horse into the Breeders' Cup Mile off that race, off workouts. Remember, we haven't seen him since about Preakness time. Here's Uni, also trained by Chad Brown, and she is a pure late-running miler. Give her pace, she can do this. Watch the First Lady. Uni is far out of it. She is going to wheel to the far outside. She still has a lot of work to do. Here comes Uni in the pink hat, yellow silks, and she just rolls by them all. Now, yes, she got a big pace to run at in this race. She may need a similar situation here, and she's going to need a trip because in the 4-star Dave Mike, she got the big pace, but she didn't exactly get the right trip.
Yeah, I thought so too. That's the only blemish on her record dating back to the middle of last year, early last year, when they decided that she's a miler. All she does is win. She has a huge closing kick when she gets a trip. Listen, her First Lady, everything went right. The good pace, a perfect trip into it. But she just runs every time. And if this race sets up for her, don't discount her at the end. She'll be flying.
Lord Glitters upset the Queen Anne Stakes at Ascot back in June. I thought he got the setup there. I know he was sitting near the back of that 16-horse field, but there was a big split for him. You could drive a truck through it. Lord Glitters isn't a truck. He doesn't need to be. He went right through it. He was able to beat that good field by a neck. Since then, it's been tougher sledding for Lord Glitters, although I think he could make the ground excuse last time out. I don't think he liked heavy going, but I also kind of think he was exposed in the Woodbine Mile in 2018.
Yeah, I thought so too. Although the Woodbine Mile that he lost, boy, there was just no pace in that race. And if nothing else, Lord Glitters, he's a one-run closer. They're going to take him back, and he's going to need a real setup. And then Jamie Spencer's going to have to get this horse a trip. He's pretty good, Dan. His last race I thought was disappointing. Before that in the Juddmonte, I don't think he wants to go that far. So we'll just see if he can bounce back. He's going to need a trip, and he's going to need a big pace in front of him.
Hey Gammon picks up Frankie Dettori, picks up Lasix, and I think he was just stymied by soft going in his last two races. The race 3 starts back. He finished ahead of Sway Dois in the Group 2 Lennox Stakes going 7. I don't know, Mike. I kind of think a mile's pushing it for him.
Yeah, he finished ahead of Sway Dois and Space Traveler in that race, but I didn't see his excuse not to win there. He got a perfect trip. And got run down. I don't know. I guess he's got some races that make him a contender. I don't really like this horse overall, though.
Shame that Bowie's Hero got a lousy post in this race. He's probably a fringe contender at best, but he has, again, the home court advantage, and he always seems to run. He always seems to give a good account of himself, and he ran well in the Shadwell Turf Mile last time out. We'll watch that race where he comes from off of it. Sway Dois going to rally from way out of it to finish 3rd. It was nice to see this horse get back into the winner's circle. He just has to work out a trip from a very difficult post position.
Yeah, true enough. I mean, he could be coming in here off a 3-race win streak, too. His Del Mar Mile, too, but he got in a lot of trouble in the stretch of that race. He got the right trip here in the Shadwell we're watching. Flavian Pratt, I thought, did a great job keeping him in the clear the entire way, and he came with his patented late run. He's a really nice horse. He's got a very tough post.
Pick time for the Breeders' Cup Mile, kicking off a pick 4 at Santa Anita on Saturday. You're going with one of the Price European horses. I think Space Traveler is still upwardly mobile. He's got to prove himself against this class of horse, but you're going to get your price. You're going 3, 9, 6, and 11. We both kind of grudgingly, I think, agree that Circus Maximus might very well be the horse to beat in this race.
Yeah, I think he might be. I just didn't want to take him on top at a short price, Dan. Maybe he's just too good for these horses, and he'll get a good trip in here, which I think you'll like about him. I don't know. I just didn't want to take him as the favorite here. Space Traveler, I don't know. Maybe he's not good enough, but I want to give him a chance. I like his last couple of races a lot. He's drawn towards the inside. If he can get a trip in this race, I think he'll make a run. I'll take those 2 horses over the 2 fillies.
So I think that Uni, I've been her biggest fan for a long time. The way she kicked home last time out, I think it was certainly a product of pace, but also a product of her just natural talent. She seems to fire each and every time for Chad. It's not a great post position, but with her running style, they're just going to try to take her back and make one run. If they give her some pace, I think Uni's going to be rolling in the lane. I went 11-9, 2-8 in the Breeders' Cup Mile, and our coverage is supported today by Racing Blue Storm, a breakthrough in sports nutrition for horses. Approximate post time for the Breeders' Cup Mile, 3:20 Pacific. Good luck.